Okay, great. First off, thank you for being here today. I know it's quite rainy, and when it rains here in DC and it snows, the world ends, right? Traffic ends. So very privileged to be here, see a lot of familiar faces. And for those that I haven't met, welcome, and thank you for being here. And in the next hour, we'll talk about this very important topic, especially around here in DC, the topic around project management, right? I mean, who has to deal with Microsoft Project? Fantastic tool, ain't it? Not. So what we're going to do in this hour is to be very pragmatic and practical about it, understanding what do I use when. I mean, docs, at work, we use SharePoint for project management. I mean, people say that, but I don't believe that. Most organizations, when they say we use SharePoint for project management, it's just a glorified file dump. That's where all the files around the project goes. You don't really use it for project management. No, docs, we use Microsoft Project for project management. I don't believe you, because in most organizations I walk into, Microsoft Project is just like glorified Excel. You make a nice, pretty Gantt chart, you print it out, everybody has a copy, that's the end of Microsoft Project, yes? Docs, we use Project Server. We try, but people freaking hate it. Help. So that's why we're here. Now, to get our conversation started, what I want to do is first set the stage and understand where we're at, or where most of us are in this grand scheme of things. So today, here's the sad reality around project management, where in a lot of organizations, project management maturity varies. Where on one hand, there's formal project management offices. Anybody PMPs in the house? Not PIMP. PMP? Yeah? All right. And you follow the knowledge areas, the processes, maybe you're ITIL certified, you're great. But guess what? Most of everybody in the organizations aren't. In fact, most of everybody in your organization are what I call reluctant project managers. Y'all with me? All right. And then you have another challenge today where we have different tools. I'm not just talking about mobile tools. We live in a BYOD, consumerization of IT world, where again, your formal project managers, they would use great tools like Project Server, Primavera. You're using Primavera? Bless your heart. But then folks in sales and marketing who won't have time to learn all this stuff, they just need stuff to work with their vendor on. What do? I'm going to use Dropbox. I'm going to use Box. Y'all with me? So how do you deal with that? And then another challenge, and this is so common here in the greater DC area, what's everybody working on? Don't you love your Tuesday resource management meetings where you bring up that ever-worship Excel file trying to figure out how many developers do I have this week to work on this request from the business? How do I prioritize if we can take on more work or not? How can I put together a budget for next fiscal year to get 2 more headcount for my dev team because I know I need more, but I can't prove it? Right? You feel the love? And then your boss. I want my dashboard. Right? That's a secret to promotion. You want to get promoted at work tomorrow when you see your boss? One word. Dashboard. We live in a world where we're told to be more accountable, to be more transparent. We want visibility, yet how do we do all this? Every Thursday evening, you whip up all these Excel files, email, fire a PowerPoint to put together your report that's, by the way, 5 weeks old already. And when they decide you want to take action, it's been done. How do you do this today? Does this look familiar? You see, what I want to look at today is really touching these 3 key objectives, right? So I want to look at different scenarios we engage in. When I talk about scenarios, the very base level of collaboration, people talk about project collaboration, we work together. That's a very simple foundation level. And then we'll look at other situations where we need help around reporting, around resource management, around portfolio management, around program management, what options we have that Microsoft offers. Second, we'll look at the different tools that's available. I'll be very clear in discussing when you use what over what tools you use when, and more importantly, I'll also distinguish what's available on-prem and also what's available in the cloud. The last part of this session is we'll look at some of the tips, techniques, ideas that you can help support your project management initiatives, not only for today, but also you can scale it for tomorrow. So just a quick background. Again, my name is Dutz. I'm a PMP, and I've been working with project management or project management tools since 1997, way before SharePoint. For those of you that I've interacted with, you guys know I wrote the book SharePoint for Project Management. Anybody read that book? All right, for those that haven't, I'll give you a copy. Would you like that? Yes. All right. So I'll connect with Dan, and I'll give him a code. He'll email everyone who attended here and completes the session. And then you could download from Amazon or Microsoft Press. That's just 80 cents less a copy for my son's college fund, but that's okay. So, this has been a big passion of mine, this area of being effective in project management. And certainly tools can help us with that. So, today I'm with AppPoint. I'm the Vice President of Customer Strategy and Solutions. And it's exciting because I work a lot still in this field, in this area, but looking at how tools can help us. One of the key areas I was sharing with Jason earlier, I'm working on is the idea of mobility around helping people collaborate better when they're mobile. But not just collaborate better when they're mobile, but being able to make sure they collaborate with trusted devices, trusted locations, and trusted users. Exciting stuff. I can show you some stuff in a second. So today, here's the typical scenarios that we encounter in the realm of project management. One, at the base level, is what I would call very ad hoc, very simple collaboration. This is the idea that anybody needs to work with somebody, be it internally or externally. Hey, docs, my boss told me to research on this RFP and see who's done this before. But I need some of my contractors to work with this initiative with me. You know, it's not funded yet. It's a small little project, but we need something to centralize information. And that scenario is quite common. In fact, all of us are working on some type of project at an ad hoc level today. The other part is what I would call semi-formal. So again, think through the life cycle of your project. Let's say your boss told you to do a little research work. Okay, that's something we're going to go after. Let's put some more funding, put a proposal team together, work on it. If you work on proposals, especially in this area, there's a certain process you go through. There's certain templates you use. Y'all with me? Forgive my heavy southern accent, you know, y'all. I come from the deep south, Manila, Philippines. And so you go through that process. But there's a little more rigor. So for those that are PMP or some kind of certification, you know, there's certain standards you follow. And there's different requirements for that, right? Well, docs, we need fixed templates. Docs, we can't just aimlessly email people because stuff will be audited later, so we need stuff for that. And then at the top level, where I would call more formal, where there are certain methodologies you follow. Let's say if you're under compliance, well, docs, this has to subscribe to Sarbanes-Oxley. Or docs, we're in the healthcare, it has to fulfill HIPAA requirements for PII not being exposed. Or docs, you know, once this project is done, because of Sarbanes-Oxley, we have to keep the data for 8 years, but it's read-only. And docs, we need KPIs, you know. For those not familiar with KPI, key performance indicators, these are your red, amber, green. This is what management worships every day, right? We need that. So these are some of the common scenarios, but at the end of the day, when we talk about project management, our goal is to hit the goal, right? And regardless of who you are, what you do in the organization, the needs are different, yet the problem today is there's no way from an organizational perspective to have a single solid platform that would support all this. You know, I walk into organizations today where if people are doing this, oh, they're using Box or Dropbox or Google Drive or emailing back and forth, right? By the way, you know, email is the #1 project management tool today in 2014. You're laughing, but it's true. A 1973 frickin' technology. Or file share, right? But then, you know, people may be using this cloud-based service because it's easy. Some people may use Microsoft Project, email, maybe Primavera. But at an organizational level, there's no way to streamline all this and understand what's going on. Now, from a Microsoft's perspective, the beauty of this is Microsoft allows you to deliver and fulfill project management on your terms. And what I mean by that, if you think about these three different scenarios, right, at the ad hoc level, where you're actually doing task management, and then there's a little more standards, semi-formal, where you're doing project management, and then at a higher level, you're doing program portfolio management. Microsoft has different options and solutions for you. And the beauty with this is these options and solutions, they work together. Now, does that mean if we have Project Server or Project Online, everybody has to use that? No. Right? Does that mean if all my people or my colleagues are comfortable with SharePoint, then there's no way for them to take what they're doing here and make it available there? No. That's the beauty of it. The key is, though, is to understand where you're at and what solution you're going to provide to your colleagues. Now, this session, by the way, is being recorded. I'm going to do a lot of demos. You get this PowerPoint deck as well, and you get this video as well. Once we're done, again, I'll send it to Dan, and it's going to be $100 a download. I'm serious. Yeah? Okay, so let's look at what this all means. Right? From a Microsoft's perspective, the idea of project management, it's not just Microsoft Project. Because oftentimes when we think project management, Microsoft Project. Not really. I mean, if you think about Microsoft Project, I'll talk more about this in a second, it's a great scheduling tool, it's a great reporting tool, and resource management tool. But in project management, those are just three minor elements of project management. In project management, there's communication, there's collaboration, right? There's financial management, budget management. There's a lot of stuff involved. So it's not just Microsoft Project. From a Microsoft perspective, the tool sets are comprehensive. Again, starting with email, hopefully we're not stuck there, to a comprehensive portfolio management tool like Project Server. Throughout multiple devices, and I'll show you different scenarios around this. And also both cloud and on-premises solutions are available for you. The idea that Microsoft has, or the vision around Microsoft's project management solution, is really to fulfill different needs for different people, make everyone happy. Right? There's no other company out there I can confidently say that has this full suite of solutions that can support this at an organizational level. Who's used Basecamp? Anybody use Basecamp? I mean, it's an alright tool, but SharePoint's much more powerful than that, for example. There's a lot of other cloud-based tools out there, which is great, but the problem is there's no integration point back to your organization. I'll show these scenarios to you in a second. Now, how does all this work? So I'm going to step you through these three typical scenarios that we engage in the world of project management. So first things first, let's talk about this concept or this idea of task management. And when we think about task management, again, this is where I need to get something done with a couple of people, right? And the typical level of complexity would be low to medium. You know, you're getting started. And a great solution that you can take advantage of, obviously, we always start with Excel, or I mean Outlook, I should say, right? Hey, Dan, I'm working. My boss just told me to do this. Do you have templates for that? Whatever. Y'all with me? I mean, you can still do that, but the problem is, as you've already experienced, as the thing snowballs, the email snowballs, it's just a pain. So you don't want to get down that road again. So what do? The first level, or the first suite of tools you can take advantage of, certainly is SharePoint. SharePoint is really good in allowing team-based collaboration, team-based project communication and artifact management. And I'm sure being here at the SharePoint SPUG, you all should be familiar with SharePoint, but let me do a quick demo here and get this story started here. So I got my SharePoint site here. Yes, I use a Mac, get over it. So this is my company's SharePoint implementation, Office 365. And part of the process of our organization, whenever there's a project that I need to work on, I go to our intranet. In our intranet, there's a place called Project Center. Large or small, we just go here. Right? And that's one of the key things that a lot of organizations fail in when they deploy these kinds of tools. You see, project management is not just tools. Project management is a three-legged beast. Tools, right? Process, and the people doing it, right? I've been in a lot of project server, SharePoint being used for project management, deployment, and a lot of times organizations, they just don't have a process. They assume people know what to do. Hey, here's SharePoint, go do your projects there. Ends up being a big fall down. What I would recommend, so before I proceed, let me show you something here real quick. I want to show you a quick diagram because, and I'll send this to you too, here. One of the things that I recommend if you want to go down this road is come up with what I would call a swim lane or a process diagram as to how you're going to handle projects. And what this means is it doesn't have to be complicated. The idea is to make sure people are on the same page as to what the rules are, right? So for example, in this company at Contoso, whenever we work on a project, a sponsor, like this is more of a formal project, a sponsor would approve it, and once it's approved, project manager gets assigned. Once a project manager gets assigned, his or her responsibility is create the schedule, Microsoft project, assign the team, create a project site, blah, blah, blah. And then the expectation, if you're a team member, if you're a resource in this project, you're expected to, as you're doing the work, you update your tasks. Y'all with me? What does this do? It looks so simple, but this is powerful. Number one, you're setting the rules. A lot of times in organizations, yeah, we do project management. What does 80% mean? Yo, I'm 80% docs. I'm 80% done. Every time you ask the developer, how much have you done? 80%. Next week, still 80%. But what does that mean? When you want an effective project management solution, it has nothing to do with the tool. What are the rules? The second reason why this is important and powerful, we've just defined roles and responsibility. If you're a project manager, you are responsible for this stuff. You're responsible for creating the schedule, the project site, assigning resources, blah, blah, blah. And the third most important thing why this is important is you've now defined the kind of training people need. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great training out there, but what happens? How many of us have been to like a 4-day Microsoft project boot camp and walked away clueless? Because it's non-contextual. Whereas here, oh, I'm a project manager, these are all the things that I need to learn, boom! You can devise your training around this, and guess what? This may just be one day. An executive training, all they need to do is look at reports, may just be an hour. Y'all with me? So got to have this in place before you start thinking about your tool. So going back to our scenario. So, okay, we've got a process in my company, and so whenever I get started with a project, part of the rule is to create a project site. So I'm click here. I'm going to give this a name called Executive Presentation because I am tasked to put together a presentation for my boss. He's doing this big presentation for the board, right? So I just go there, I click Create, and as soon as I click Create, behind the scenes, what's happening is SharePoint is just using whatever template that's there that you've defined, or if you didn't define one, it's going to use an out-of-the-box project template, and then provision this project site. Now, I already pre-did that earlier in the interest of time. So as soon as I click Create, it created this project site. As you can see, out-of-the-box SharePoint site. Nothing out of the ordinary. Okay, I'm going to take this out because it's not relevant. So, you know, I'm sure you're familiar with this already. You've got your news feeds and document library. And for those that haven't seen SharePoint 2013, by the way, whatever you're seeing here, even if I'm using Office 365, is the same thing if you have SharePoint 2013 on-prem. Now, one of the first things I want to do is I want to fulfill and start putting some tasks, right? So research topic. All right, and due date 18th, assigned to docs. Okay, we go. And I can go on and type. Now, one of the nice things, if you haven't seen this in 2013, is they changed the task list a bit. First and foremost, they added this thing called the timeline view. This timeline view was introduced in Project 2010. Now they made it available in SharePoint 2013. So the nice thing with the timeline view is you can define specific tasks or milestones or deliverables to show up in this timeline, so visually you can see what's coming up and what's going on. The other beauty of this solution is, earlier we talked about this concept of BYOD. Again, I'm doing this on my Mac. You can have an iPad. You can still interact with this flawlessly. Now, another point that I want to bring up is while the timeline is visible in the task list, if I go to the home page, you can see the timeline view appear there as well. Question so far? Good. Okay. I'm sorry, can you say that again?
This project with PWA, is that a separate licensing?
Very good question. So the question was about PWA. So at this point, let's hold off that question. Right now, I'm talking about straight SharePoint. Okay, we start with a base level ad hoc, task management. No project server, straight up SharePoint, because this is what most everybody has. Yes? Okay. Now, the other aspect, now let's talk about this idea of ad hoc collaboration. So what I'm proposing here, friends, is when you get started, or your team gets started, or somebody in your company gets started with some ad hoc project, in lieu of firing out emails, hey, you have this template, hey, let's start working on this, I would encourage you, or encourage your colleagues, create a SharePoint site intended for that initiative. Y'all with me? Not only can they put the task, certainly anything else that they start collecting, right? They can, let's say they have some templates for the document. So let me do it here. Okay. Okay, so let's say we have some templates for my project that I want to use. Okay, some change control document, requirements document, whatever. By the way, again, I'm still in my Mac. I'm using the Finder, which is kind of like Windows Explorer. And, oops, drag and drop it there. So I uploaded some templates. Voila, right? So there. So very basic project collaboration, ad hoc collaboration. Next. So what else? So at this level, one of the things I also encourage when I work with customers is at this ad hoc level, I'm not advocating that you get rid of existing tools. Yes, sir. Question for you right here. Yes.
Oh, I was just wondering, is there a way to pre-populate that project template?
Absolutely.
With the task beforehand, with the dates, with the...
Very good question. The question was, Dux, I mean, you started the project site, but it's blank, right? You have to build it. Is there a way you can templatize certain things, right? Maybe put levels. Okay, maybe this is project 1A, where all the templates are already there. Permissions are set. Libraries are defined. Lists are defined. Absolutely. Workflows are defined for your change control. You can. And you can have multiple of these. Absolutely. Now, what I also encourage you is don't discount existing tools people use. And that's one of the big issues that organizations deal with today. IT, forgive me, no offense, but IT has this legalistic view, it's all SharePoint or nothing. Right? In fact, for me, at the end of the day, your users couldn't care less about SharePoint. If it gets my job done faster, better, sooner, I'm all for it. But if you're telling me to change how I work totally, forget it. The first rule, if you want users to adopt SharePoint, what's the first rule of Fight Club? Don't talk about the Fight Club. So you don't talk about the S word. And a great technique to get folks engaged for a platform like this is to start with what they're comfortable with. Outlook, Word, Excel. I'll give you an example, a couple examples. So let me bring this, in fact, I'll show you two things here. Let me bring up my Windows environment. Let me bring up that project site. And some of you have heard this already. I do this demo all the time, but I see new faces, so I assume you haven't seen this. But I want to show this to you because this is so simple yet so powerful. So in one of my customers I worked with a couple of years ago, so classic, they have SharePoint, it's a big file dump, they're not really using it for anything, so we help them shape the environment to be used for project management, or project collaboration. At any given point in time, this company had 100 projects that project managers manage. And unfortunately, everything's managed through email, Excel, some SharePoint, what have you. So we helped them figure out a process, very simple. We trained them. And one of the things we found out at the end of the month, every project manager has to send an expense report to Miss Sally in accounting for their project expenses. Very typical. So imagine Miss Sally at the end of the month getting 100 pretty much emails with Excel attachments. And her job is to take these attachments, put it on her desktop, put a consolidated expense report together. You know, Miss Sally? And I asked her, so how much time do you spend doing this, Miss Sally? She goes, I spend, I don't know, total about 6-7 hours every month in the last 8 years. You know, it's my job. I go, what if I tell you we can cut that time down in half with this new technology we deployed? No more email, you know, since the idea is your project site is a one-stop shop, everything will be here. We'll put the expenses here, so you just update it there. You'll have this nice report, what have you. She goes, it's great, but no. I go, why not? I'm too old for that stuff. I'm retiring next year, SharePoint, Schmearpoint. I love Excel. I'm used to Excel. I'm fine with it. You know Miss Sally, right? So I go, okay, Miss Sally, how about this? Forget SharePoint. What if I show you a feature in Excel that would still give you half the time savings I promised you earlier? Really? I go, yeah. So here's the new process. What we're going to do, we're going to tell project managers to put their expenses in this project site. No more emailing you stuff. But as soon as they put it here, automatically it's going to show up in an Excel file sitting on your desktop. You don't have to go anywhere. Really? Okay, let me show you. So here's the deal, Miss Sally. First things first, let me fire up Excel. So let's say here are some basic expenses, right? We bought projector, computer, carpet, and let me tag this as the executive presentation, or label it expenses, okay? Now, as I pre-populate with some data, the next step is, by the way, friends, all I'm doing here is, these are all out of the box stuff. I'm not doing anything special. I'm going to convert this to an Excel table. As soon as I convert this to an Excel table, notice that in Excel, up here it says publish and allow sync, okay? So what I'm going to do, Miss Sally, is go back to this project site, and what I'm going to do then is, let me go back to Excel, and enter that address of the project site, okay, because I don't want to hand type it. Let's call this expenses, and let me just hit publish. So what's going to happen is Excel will go to that site, log me in, make sure I can do what I'm supposed to do, take the information, create a custom list, publish it, keep the connection in place. Y'all follow me? And it's done. Once it's done, what happens? Now I can look at, or me as a project manager, I could look at this expense information in the same project site. Heck, in fact, let me bring up my Mac again, because again, I like my Mac. So, so now the project manager, in the duration of the project, all he or she has to do is, instead of emailing Miss Sally expenses, they just come here and enter their expenses. You know, so let's say for this project, we bought a Mac Pro desktop. Okay, it's the top of the line, $15,000. Okay, all right. Now, knowing that SharePoint list has alerts, right? I can put an alert that every time an expense is entered, alert Miss Sally, so she'll know that there's a new expense. That's called micromanagement. Man, you're a tough crowd. So as soon as that alert went out, Miss Sally looks at, gets the email. All she has to do is click a button that says sync on an Excel file on her desktop. Bada bing, bada boom. There it is. So now she carries on with her job without dealing with email. Let me review the receipts. oh, you guys didn't spend $15,000. The project manager erroneously entered it. She now entered it, updated it, and not only did she update the information, she can push the information back to the project site. And once she does that, the latest and greatest piece of update is reflected on this project site. And voila, there we have it, $1,500. Now, what am I saying here? I'm not proposing you tell everyone to go to SharePoint. In this scenario, her role in the grand scheme of things is to process project expenses. She lives in Excel. Let her live in Excel, right? Let project managers go to SharePoint, do their thing. Information comes in here. And I taught her how to do this. So she did the 99 other projects. And you know how in Excel you can create like a summary sheet? Pulls in all the data with her summary of all the expenses. 3 months later, I talked to her. So, Miss Sally, how's that going? She, oh, Docs, thank you, you know. I watched myself last month how much time I spent. I didn't spend 7 hours. I spent 5 hours because I still need to look at the receipts. I have to deal with email, putting this stuff in my desktop, all that good stuff. She was excited. She didn't even care about SharePoint because I helped her get her job done faster, better, sooner. That's project management on her terms. You see the value? Now, who doesn't know about this capability? All right, very good. And this capability, by the way, has been there since Excel 2003 and SharePoint 2003, in case you don't know. It's just there. Because a lot of us, especially technology, we overthink it. Right? Oh, we need to build a dashboard. We need to put this info path forward, put the expenses. I know you. But they can care less. So when you think about the ad hoc level, or when people want to get started, a very basic collaboration engagement, it has to be quick, it has to be easy, it has to be familiar. And SharePoint can provide that. Certainly there's some level of training and guidance, but you don't go in there and say, hey, here's SharePoint, here's a list, here's a library. There's no context. The next part is, as you go up to the next level, when we think about projects. And when we think about projects, this deals more with advanced scheduling. Maybe there's element of resource management. And it's beyond what SharePoint can handle. So a lot of folks, when they ask me, well, Docs, I mean, SharePoint is very basic for project management. I agree. I don't even want to say SharePoint can be really used for full-fledged project management. It's great for project collaboration. So when you graduate and when you go beyond the need, or when you go beyond what SharePoint can offer, that's where you can take advantage of tools like Microsoft Project. So let me go back to my project site and kind of step through this with you. So when you think about project, the latest and greatest version is Project 2013. Microsoft Project does 3 things really, really well. Number 1, it allows us to do schedule development and management. Not only can you build a project schedule, you can actually manage a project against it. Second is you could do resource management for one project. And then certainly you could do project reporting as well. And the key is, again, it assumes that you're familiar with project management fundamentals. You know, I get people complaining to me all the time, oh, project management or Microsoft Project is so useless. It's so complicated, so convoluted. Yeah, it's not Excel. It assumes you have some project management background. You don't just give anybody this tool. It's just too much. Right? Unless you're a full-fledged project manager, most of what everyone does is apply what they know in Excel and build a schedule, make it colorful. That's all they do with this thing. And this is not cheap. This piece of tool, it's $1,000 retail on the desktop. So, what are you suggesting, Docs? So in my mind, when you go beyond what SharePoint can offer, and for example, you need more advanced scheduling capability, I assume that individual would have some project management background. This is the part where you can take advantage of Microsoft Project. So in this scenario, for example, let's go back here. So let's say I've got a couple of tasks, but Docs, you know, I need more of a detailed schedule. There's dependencies that I need. For those not familiar with dependencies, it's like A has to happen first before B can happen. And then when B happens, C and D can happen. Y'all follow me? You can't really do that out of the box in a task list. This is where Microsoft Project shines. So I can take my task list, and if I click on my ribbon toolbar, there's this thing called Open with Project. Actually, I've already opened it. We'll close this in a second here. Okay, so I can open in a project. So what's going to happen is that piece of information will come down to my copy of Microsoft Project, and I will see, it will take the information, it will sync it, just like what you saw in Excel earlier. And now I can use Microsoft Project to update a couple things. So, for example, I'm just going to add a couple other pieces of information here. So, research topic, I'm going to give this a duration of 1 week. To do it, 14 to 18, that's cool. Look for templates, 1 week. Let's do 2 days. And since I'm using Microsoft Project, I can establish dependencies. Let me put some links here. Very nice. What else? Check videos. 3 weeks. Okay. And let's do this. And let me put a link as well. Okay. And the other thing is, let me take all these pieces of information as you're seeing it. Notice that in Project, there's the timeline view as well. What I could do here is, let's go back up. Okay, so let me add this to the timeline. So it's on the timeline, and let me color code it. Let's do this. Make it yellow, make it red. All right. Now, I can keep on building my schedule and working it. And let me hit save. Okay, and let me hit, actually, there you go. Now, so I can keep working this, but in the end, what you can do is, since this information is synced, it will be made available on the project site as well, powered by SharePoint. Y'all follow me? So I kind of did another example earlier in the interest of time, just to kind of show you what this looks like. And here it is, right? So now the idea is, again, we're on level 2 here, where it's semi-formal, we need better scheduling. Now, once it's synced with Microsoft Project, not only can I see the task list, but the same piece of information is synchronized, and I can have all the goodness in Microsoft Project made available on SharePoint. Moving forward, the idea now is the project manager, they love Microsoft Project, they use Microsoft Project. The resources, the team themselves, they don't need Microsoft Project. And you know how it goes, right? In your company, if you email a Microsoft Project file around to your team, what happens? It comes back as Word. Because people have no clue what to do with it, or they don't have a copy of Microsoft Project. So now your team members, they can come here to the project site, and let's say they're assigned to do a task, they can just tick it off, I'm done. Or if you're tracking it based on hours, how much time you've spent, you can put the hours in, all that good stuff. Any questions? Yes, sir.
That doesn't show dependencies, right? There's no way to reflect that.
Very, very good question. The question is, this doesn't show dependencies. It does not.
So if somebody goes in and deletes one of those tasks, they know that they're messing up dependencies.
Very good question. What if somebody accidentally or maliciously deletes these tasks, right? I'm going to delete it so I don't have any tasks to do, right? You can put SharePoint capabilities in place, like, for example, content approval. Or you can put workflows in place before it gets committed. So you can put those security parameters
Out of the box.
out of the box. No, you're right. If you have permissions, if I delete this and if the project manager hits sync, it'll disappear. Now, if you keep version control as well, let me think. If you delete stuff, it's going to go to recycle. Other questions? Now, I want to show you a new feature in Project 2013. So let me close this guy. Okay. So in 2013, they introduced this new feature in Microsoft Project, and it's the ability to create a SharePoint-based project site directly from Project. So let me step back here. The idea of syncing project and a task list is not new. It's been there since 2010 Project. But in 2013, they introduced this feature where, let's say you're building, if you're the kind of project manager, you start with Microsoft Project, which is fine. So you're doing all this, and then you realize, okay, now I need a project site. Historically, you have to go to your SharePoint implementation, create site, sync it. But in 2013, you could go to File, Share. I got to save it first. Okay, there you go. Sync with a new site called Software Development Plan, and let me give you a, I think I already did this before, but let me define which site collection to go in, and let me hit save. Okay, so as soon as I'm doing this, what Project is doing, it's contacting that SharePoint site, making sure I can do what I'm trying to do here, which has permissions to create a site. It's going to create a site on my behalf. It's going to take all these tasks, sync it with a task list. It's going to take this Microsoft Project file, store it in a document library called Site Assets. So this is kind of cool, especially for those that start with Microsoft Project first as they build their project schedule. And once it's done, you should see IE pop up, and it'll show you the project site, all pre-populated. And again, you can do this on-prem and then in Office 365 as well. And again, just to clarify, at this point, all we're talking about is SharePoint and Microsoft Project Professional on the desktop. We haven't gone to any Project Server or PWA conversation. Are we good? Okay. So a lot of you, I'm sure all of you have SharePoint in your organization. If you do have SharePoint, if you do have Project Pro, which I suspect some of your colleagues have, yeah, this is the other catch. If you're using a template, some of these templates have predefined resources assigned to the task. If those resource doesn't exist as a user in SharePoint, it'll throw a fit like this. Yeah. So what I would suggest is, because I didn't check resources, but what I would suggest is make sure there's no resources attached to it when you start syncing. So here you go. So now a brand new site was created. All the tasks are synced. If I go to my site contents, I go to my site assets library, you should see the MPP file in there. Good? How's everything so far? Useful? Okay, good. Okay, so Project 2013, again, just to kind of step back, we talked about an ad hoc level. At the task level, yeah, you could use Outlook, Excel, Word, all the common tools people use, but I encourage you and your colleagues to start using SharePoint to centralize communication and centralize project artifact and task. And then if you need better scheduling, take advantage of Project Professional on the desktop, sync it with SharePoint. Now, when do you outgrow that, right? So if you come to a point where, well, Dux, I'm actually managing 2 projects or 3, but I got the same set of developers working on it, right? I suspect some of you are in this situation. You can kind of jerry-rig SharePoint to do this, but it's cumbersome. Where SharePoint and project works really well is more of a single project, resources are for that project, schedules for that project. That's it. That's why if you look at the SharePoint ecosystem, there's a lot of third-party products that's like bolt-ons and add-ons to SharePoint to support a lot of these needs. Now, what I would recommend, and personally, while, again, depending on your needs, a lot of these third-party products may work for you, but what I found, because I've worked with all of them in the last few years, is they don't scale. They don't scale. And if you want something that's scalable and certainly powerful, and if you're looking at things like you need program management, portfolio management, resource management, this is where you use Project Server or Project Online. And Project Online is the cloud-based version of Project Server on Office 365. I'll talk more about that in a second. So when do you go here? You maximize Project Server or Project Online when you get to a point where, Docs, I need visibility into all my resources, who's doing what when, Can we take on more work, or do I need to hire more people because we got all this backlog and all the pipeline all the sales we're doing? For ducks, because we need better reporting in BI. I'll show you a couple examples in a second, where the boss wants to compare how did we do Q1 this year compared to Q1 last year of all our projects. How do we track demand, right? Well, ducks this year is a cost-cutting year for us, and we have all these demand of projects. Do they fit the criteria to do cost-cutting? Because if not, we're not going to work on those. What about just basic portfolio management? I just need a big picture view of all the projects we're working on the next 2 weeks. So if you have all these needs, I'll bring that up in a second here. If you have all these needs, then Project Server is certainly the way to go. So let me show this to you. So what I've got here is Project Online. This is Project Online is the web or the Office 365 version of Project Server 2013. Now, how does licensing work? So again, depending on the kind of organization you are for on-prem Project Server licensing, forgive me, I'm not good with licensing Microsoft. You have to get a PhD degree for that. So, but with the cloud version, which is very exciting, is they made it straightforward. So there's 2 licensing models for Project Online. And let me explain. So one of the barriers with Project Server implementation is the high cost. Some of you may be familiar with this already because it requires that you have SharePoint Enterprise, and then you get Project Server, and then you get CALs, and then your users have to have Project Pro. Y'all with me? So what Microsoft did, they have 2 different types of offering that you can take advantage of. One is you can get Project Online straight up. What that means is it's either if you get a yearly subscription, it's $33 a year, monthly $45. What you get with this is if you don't have Office 365, is essentially you get SharePoint Online, E3, and full-blown Project Server and Project Pro on the desktop. I mean, considering what you're getting, it's not expensive. So this would be ideal for like their project managers who needs the full suite of capabilities and tools. Y'all follow me? Now, they also have another offering that's going to be available May 1st, because when they came out with this, everybody's like, yeah, that's cool, but the majority of our team don't need the full-fledged capability. The majority of our team are either resources who need to update, put in their time, or managers that need to look at reports. They don't need Project Pro. So Microsoft on May 1st is offering this. I promise you, it had nothing to do with these ducks. This is on their website, by the way. Maybe I should ask for royalty. Now, $7 per user per month. They call this Project Lite, and essentially what the user would get, they won't get Project Pro on the desktop. They'll get essentially a SharePoint. They can interact, and I'll show this to you in a second. They can interact with the project site, which is SharePoint, put in their tasks, upload documents. Managers can look at reports and all that good stuff. Okay? So this is the cloud offering that they have. So what I'm showing you now is Project Online, right? So I got the full-fledged version. So certainly I call it Project Center, but this is Project Online. So as you may, yes.
But this would be if you purchase the non-cloud version, you get the same functions, or is it?
Oh yeah, it's all the same. Functionally, it's the same, but it's the cost, right? Because so give me anybody deployed Project Server or sold Project Server? How much does it cost? Just to put perspective.
The server license is like $3,200.
Yeah, so you gotta have SharePoint Server Enterprise. So Project Server is $3,200, but there's client access license for each user, which is $70 a user a year, and then Project Pro is $1,000 per user. So you gotta have a lot of people to make sense in investing in this. If you only have a couple hundred or 200, you're not only worrying about the upfront investment. Who's going to take care of it? That's the other problem. There's a lot of Project Server posers out there, or experts, right?
A lot of organizations still aren't for something.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, but it comes down, and I get that a lot here in DC. Docs, it's not safe. Prove it. Docs, cloud is no good. Prove it. Or you do online banking, Amazon? Oh, Microsoft is not secure. You know, Office 365 is the only DoD approved cloud provider. Well, Docs, it's not in the FedRAMP. It's not in the government cloud. Wrong answer. Office 365 has a FedRAMP version. There's a government cloud. So I know, I get it, right? Oh, we don't want to do cloud. Why? Because it comes to dollars and cents. It makes sense. Unless you're telling me you have thousands and thousands of users. But functionally, to answer your question, everything that's available in the cloud today is available on-prem. But that's not going to be true the coming months and years. Microsoft's investment will be cloud first.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing it right now in Office 365 and SharePoint.
All the functionalities will come up first in the cloud. Yeah. So I mean, you know, if you want stories of government agencies that's going here, I could tell you a bunch, right? So anyway, coming back to this, so this is Project Online or Project Server. Just to look at some of the typical scenarios that I talked about. So let's say, Docs, I want a big picture view of schedules or financial data or resource data or project demand. The beauty with Project Online is, again, you can get a big picture view of how things are doing. You can sort it, organize it, and arrange it in however you want it to be displayed, depending on who's looking at it. So let's say these are all our portfolio of our projects, so that's pretty cool. And I could go into a specific project. So let's say, okay, let me go to the Hub Upgrade project, and as I click on it, it's going to bring up the schedule and information about the project, and I also can access the collaboration site where my resources are collaborating. So you see the full schedule, and I could go to the project site as well. And again, resources can work here, right? So it's a straight SharePoint. All the tasks are here. They put their task, and information will roll up. And this is another key point, right? We talk about project management on your terms where Miss Sally lives in Excel. Imagine her putting Excel information, syncs with a SharePoint site, syncs with the all-up financial data that drives a dashboard. Huge. Do you ever think a day would come Excel can update a web page? That's essentially what's going on. Now, the other aspect that I'd like to bring up, so we looked at schedule management from a portfolio level, is I'd like to bring up resource management. So this is one of the biggest pain points in organizations today is just getting a handle around your resources. And again, mostly our resources are people, but your resources could be equipment, facilities, whatnot. So let's say I want to see what Alex and Docs are working on or what their capacity is, and this is real-time data. So when I click resource availability, notice that based on these people, it shows me between a time range or time frame. It shows me what Alex is working on, what projects this week, how much time he's allocated, Docs as well, etc. Now, one of the things that I hear a lot from organizations having Project Server, they ask me this question: Docs, I can't get my developers to put their time in. We have Project Server, it's configured well, but we already have a timesheet system, whatever. Or they just don't want to put their time because they use TFS, right? What's that? Exactly. So TFS integrates, and the beauty of 2013, in case you're not familiar, is what Microsoft did around task management. They created a single task management, they call it a task service. Long story short, a task is a task is a task, be it Outlook, SharePoint, or project. Before, it's individual. So today, if I have a task assigned in Project Server, it's going to show up in Outlook.
Even TFS.
Yes, if it's integrated.
Right.
Yeah. Or if I have a task in Outlook, I could go to my the My Site doesn't exist anymore, but what used to be My Site, there's a aggregate task. Let me kind of bring that up. Here we go. Task. So this is like an aggregated task view, My Task. So all these tasks coming from personal, which is my Outlook. This is a project task. It could be just a SharePoint site. It could be a project server site. But it rolls up, and I could slice and dice and view it however I want. I can update it here. You know, I have this project going on. That's done. That's done. That's done. One-stop shop for me as a researcher. Yes, sir.
What's TFS? Is that
Yeah, it's Team Foundation Server.
Oh.
It's for the devs using
That's right.
configuration management. Yeah. So the resource capability is very powerful. The other area that Project Server is very powerful and effective in, it's in the area of reporting. So, for example, I'll show you 2 example reports here. One of which is looking at our resourcing. So I put together a simple report. This is real time. This is based on all the projects we have and based on the priorities we put in. And it will kind of talk about if we need to hire more resources based on capacity. Y'all with me? Now, certainly this is assuming that all these projects, the team are entering data accordingly, appropriately, following what our rules are. And if that's so, this can help you forecast when you need resources or not. The other aspect is, from a reporting perspective, you can certainly take advantage of SharePoint reporting capabilities. So I have another report here using PowerView. Essentially, I put this together in Excel, and this is quite powerful. So I put this report together in Excel to have a big picture view of all my projects. And Excel Web Services is displaying it, and it's utilizing PowerView. So let me explain what PowerView is. PowerView is a reporting capability that provides animation. I know that's not the formal definition, but it's kind of cool because what it could do, you know, like if you've seen like scary movies or Jack Bauer, that kind of 24, Mr. President, the virus started here in 24 hours. In 6 months, everybody will be zombies. You seen those before, right? What to kind of show you? That's kind of what PowerView could do. Because now I have this report. With PowerView, I could go through this report and animate in an animated way. It'll move. I can filter. By the way, this works on an iPad, Android, what have you. And it can filter, so it's very visual. And you can grab relevant information that matters to you around all these different projects. Questions? Okay, so those are some of the highlights of what Project Server, Project Online offers. Again, it's that tight integration with a unified set of holistic tools and solutions. Regardless of what you need, what you want to do, the platform can support it. Now, what I encourage you is to think outside of traditional project management. Because again, we get so stuck on, oh, it's schedule, it's portfolio, it's resources. I mean, while all that's valid, what we miss is a lot of times is what I would call, again, our reluctant project managers here. Right? They end up using email or Dropbox or Box, but provide the platform, in this case SharePoint, and be able to tap all the data to roll it up at an enterprise level. With Microsoft, you could grow depending on what you need. You know, if you need mobile, if you need tablet access, or another example I want to show you is, let's say, okay, Docs, you know, I think I was talking to somebody earlier, talking about Yammer, right? So I use Yammer a lot. Dan was talking about Yammer earlier. So one of the greatest capabilities of Yammer is the ability for conversations to happen. And what I like about Yammer is it integrates with email. Most of the time I use Yammer via email, which is cool, right? So I could do ad hoc polling and conversations, but check this out. Even better, what if you can integrate a Yammer group into a project where all the conversations happen there, instead of capturing it separately in an email thread? That's so powerful. So for example, right? So let's say the day came, I'm doing this presentation, and I want to show my team how great the audience is, right? And prove to them that I'm actually doing this presentation. So here's what I'm going to do. So I jumped on that same project feed on Yammer, and I'm going to take a picture. Okay? In fact, I need to be in this picture. Do you mind taking a picture? Come on up. Stand. Just tap anywhere. All right? So, yeah, after I'm done, I'm going to tag you to Facebook, everybody. All right. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
All right, good. All right? So, when you think about this, before, if we're on site, I actually did this for a customer, they're like, Docs, we're doing construction, we take pictures and videos and quick updates, but we want to keep it stored in that repository. And our colleagues, how come the picture? Yeah, take a picture. It's still thinking. Oh, there you go. All right. Here we are. Okay. So, yeah, and we integrated this, and they need immediate feedback. And guess what? If you're part of this Yammer conversation or Yammer group, boom, you get the email. And you'll see once I hit refresh, it should refresh by itself. That information is already there. Again, you can integrate a lot of these pieces together. So think beyond just schedule. You can integrate all these tools and solutions that are out there. And some of you may not be aware, Yammer pretty much is free, at least the base level. If you want to use it for this, it's free still. I mean, there's advanced stuff you can do with Yammer. I promise you it's going to show up, but I'll bring it back up in a second. Now, the other consideration is, since this is on 2013, there's a lot of other options out there. Because, Docs, what if, we need this functionality, but it's not on Project Server or SharePoint? Do we have to custom build it? You could, but before you do that, since this pretty much sits on SharePoint, it supports the app model. In the Office 365 Marketplace, for example, there's a lot of apps already, not only for SharePoint, but Project Online as well. So if I go back, I'm going to show you. Is a picture that bad that I don't want to load? There you go. See that? Yeah, you guys are cool. So one of the things that in a typical project management world, meetings are huge. We love meetings, right? No? The challenge, or at least not the challenge, but the problem is I think in 2013 they took away meeting workspaces. If you use that a lot, it's gone. But there's an app for that. So at AppPoint we have this meetings app, and it's free. You can download it and install it now. It's good for SharePoint and Project Online. Essentially, it captures your meeting. You can put agenda, you can put timer, add decision, action items, all that good stuff, right?
Meeting minutes as well.
What's that?
Meeting minutes.
Yeah, meeting minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it ties to the task and all that good stuff. So it's there. So you've got a lot of these apps that are out there. The other point I want to raise is, other than these apps in Project Server or Project Online, they introduce this feature, visibility mode. Not a lot of people know about it, but in my mind, I think it's pretty cool and powerful. It's very subtle, but let me explain. Right? Let me explain. So visibility mode is the idea. Let me kind of bring this back in a second here. Let me go to my Project Center. Okay, so visibility mode addresses the issue in a lot of companies today where, especially in Project 2010 or SharePoint 2010, where Project Server and SharePoint is kind of separate. In a lot of companies, people do project management with SharePoint. So you got all these SharePoint sites for project. Y'all with me? And then there's this other world of Project Server, but there's no connection. If you're trying to suck data, either you write custom code, it's just too hard. With visibility mode, the idea is not every project site has to be something that's in PWA or something in Project Server. It could be a straight up SharePoint site. That's it. Maybe that's all we need, right? A SharePoint site, just like what I did earlier. But I need to look at schedule and somehow roll it up globally. That's what visibility mode is about. So with visibility mode, I can tap into a SharePoint site. I can say add a SharePoint site. So it sees, hey, there's these two SharePoint sites you want to bring in. Yep, Just want to bring that in. Boom. So now all the schedule-related information will now be surfaced into this global view. Is that clear? Because again, used to be that was a problem. It's a whole separate thing. You got to jerry-rig the reports, but now you can see it. Now, speaking of reports and whatnot, let me show you some examples out there that's taking advantage of this. Okay, so while that's loading, so this is an example, and this is 2013 example. It's a project we're involved with, and we're still involved with. It's on-prem. It's the state of Hawaii for their OIMT. And what it is essentially this organization manages multi-million, gazillion-dollar projects every year. And they need a way not only to make information transparent real time, but they need something so that the teams can work on together effectively. So the technology stack here, SharePoint 2013, project server, Yammer. So what you're seeing here is just the external public-facing reporting, but internally it's project server driving this. Another example that's kind of related to this town is, we'll wait till it loads. This example I'm bringing up, this is public information. It's with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And similar idea. They want a platform that can provide reporting capabilities, collaboration capabilities, and then resource management capabilities. So this is in 2013 as well. It's taking a while to load, but when you look at it, it doesn't obviously look like SharePoint. They've custom branded it to make it more, in line with the EPA look and feel. So a lot of organizations are taking advantage of this, and like I said, it's just a matter of when. But more and more, we're seeing a lot of organizations moving towards the cloud. Any questions? How is it useful? Good. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and. I've got my information up here, and I'll make sure I'll send all this stuff to Dan, and Dan will get it out to you. If you have questions, let me know. If not, thank you for being here, and looking forward to talking to you.